This is the TeamClearCoat podcast. We're two friends finally doing something about our obsession with cars.
We're probably not doing it well, but it should be fun, and we might actually learn something along the way. I'm Ian.
And I'm Dave, and this is our show.
Hello, Dave.
Hi, Ian.
Today we have a guest in the blanket where we've trapped yet another person and convinced them. We've lured them to your basement. With us today is Ted Parks, founder, owner, chief mechanic,
and also lowest plebe
of Varsity Roadsters. Yeah. Yep. So welcome to the Blanket Fort. Thanks for agreeing to follow us down some stairs to whatever this is.
Yeah, it looks like something out of Silence of the Lambs or something. So I just hope I get out of here alive.
We haven't even gotten to the lotion yet. That's good. So you're here today because we talked about this on the show quite a lot a few months ago.
Yeah.
I broke my ankle and went to physical therapy and saw your car, your creation, and left a note on your windshield. And so let's bring up a picture of it. So
absolutely.
The only pictures we've seen on the show have been my terrible cell phone pictures. So it's nice to see a real one. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you're not watching the YouTube video, make sure you Google Varsity Roadsters Denver. That should get you to where you need to go. It's this gorgeous car that has all these different elements in it. So we're really excited to have you on and talk about the crazy journey to get to this finished product.
Well, as you guys already experienced, I love talking about cars and this car in particular. So this is a pleasure for me.
So I want to talk about the way that I saw it, and then the way and like how I'm sure that you get a lot of your interactions where people are like, what is that? Because the situation was you usually park like on the second floor of a parking garage, right? And I was going to the fourth floor. And so I was like going around.
You were Tokyo drifting through the turns.
as you do.
4-wheel drifting, yeah.
As you do. And so I was going down and I just like caught the little bit of the front fender through the gaps in the parking garage. And I was like, is that a Cobra? What is that? And then so I doubled back around, like I went back and did a loop around the parking lot, looked like a crazy person, and then went back up, and then I was like, oh wait, no, that's a jet. No, that's a no. And then I just ran out of stuff, and then I got out and started looking at it, and I was like, oh, this is something totally new that I've never seen before. But it has like there's a little bit of Cobra in there. There's a little bit of Corvette in there. I think there's a little bit of Maserati in there.
Yeah, sure.
With that hood scoop.
Yeah.
And a little bit of 250 GTO and all that. So is that when people come up to you, are they, if they're enthusiasts, are they just like in a state of confusion and like panic because they've exhausted their resources?
There are a lot of people, really knowledgeable car people in this town, and it's a head scratcher for them because there are people who know and can identify any car that exists, and you guys may be those guys. And to see this car is puzzling, frustrating, and intriguing. And it usually happens at a stoplight right when it turns green. They'll roll down their windows like, what is that? And I've got like 7 seconds to try to tell this story that we won't even cover in an hour today. So I usually lie and say it's an old Jag or something just so I can go where I'm going. Okay. But yeah, if you know cars and you see this car, it is a head scratcher. And the idea behind the design was to make something that looked factory. And so it wouldn't be obvious that it was one crazy dude's creation.
Right.
And so when I get that, it's a compliment to me because it means, okay, I achieved the goal of somebody thinks this is a factory car, but they just don't know what the factory is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that emotional roller coaster that somebody goes on as like a car enthusiast. Like, oh God, what is that? There's something special. I don't know what that is. Is it a? No, it must be something else like this up and down that you like. Yeah. You're not going to do that in 7 seconds at a stoplight.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also funny because I'll recognize in them when I say that it's something original, they kind of feel relieved because it wasn't like that was a car that exists that I didn't know because I know every car.
Right.
And so when they hear it, okay, it's legit that I don't know that car. That's good.
Right, right. They get like
Okay.
validation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really am a car expert.
Right, right. It's like when like a zoologist discovers like a new frog.
Right,
They're like,
exactly.
oh, I wasn't hallucinating.
Right. That really is something new and novel.
Into the ecosystem.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I love it. It's beautiful. You drove your red one over here today. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we'd like to hear about like the artistic journey to it and like, the elements.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, from like the BMW and things like that. Yeah. So
let's start with why you did this.
absolutely.
Because this is what we're showing now is your day job.
Yeah. Yep. So I, like most car enthusiasts, I'm not lucky enough to make cars my career. So for me, my day job is installing knee and hip replacements in people. So it's a lot more like building cars than people imagine. I like this slide because it shows that I've got a hammer in my hand.
Yes.
And I'm about ready to hit that piece of metal, which is a knee replacement piece. And it's all about sawing and drilling and cutting and measuring and sort of installing something that's plumb and square. And that's what I do all day long, installing hip and knee replacements and doing rotator cuff surgeries and ACL reconstructions, which is basically being a mechanic of the coolest machine ever, which is the human body. And it's just, I have the privilege of being able to open the hood on that and work on that, which is an amazing machine. So much more amazing than anything we humans have built. So that's what I do from 9 to 5. And then after hours and on weekends, I like to tinker with cars.
That's fantastic. Like there's so many, like the Venn diagram of
a lot of overlaps.
Yeah, like mechanical art, automotive, like it all just melds together.
It converges here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shrapnel in all elements of it, like, whether it be like paint on the walls or other
blood
stuff,
on the wall.
oil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, oil.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we're just stepping through a PowerPoint slideshow that you gave us.
So that's my dad. And so I grew up in a household where I had a dad who was a gearhead. And cars weren't his obsession, but flying machines were, especially vintage early flying machines.
That's a fantastic picture of your father.
I think it's great. Yep.
Yeah.
And it really shows, that's this is a plane that he built. It's made of wood and fabric. And it's a replica of a World War I flying machine. And so it's got the fake machine guns on it. You can see there. And it's is just so cool.
Yeah.
And very Jules Verne kind of, look to it. And that's the first time he stepped into it after completing it. And you can just tell
the smile on his face.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I grew up that project. To complete that project took about 12 years, and pretty much all of my conscious growing up years were going out to the garage and being asked to hold two pipes while he welded them, and like I didn't have any eye protection, so I had to close my eyes, and I just felt the pipes getting hotter and hotter, and then like the sparks burning my skin. And he's like, "Don't you move now," So there's hours of that kind of stuff.
Otherwise, Daddy's gonna fall out of the sky.
Otherwise, this torch is going on you. So
parenting.
Yeah, exactly. Good, high quality parenting. But like it or not, I got immersed into the idea that if something that you wanted didn't exist, you could make it, because this was something he wanted, and he built it.
Yeah.
And it was so absurd to tackle that project, but him doing it just sort of showed me, there's no limit to what you can do if you just put your mind to it.
That's absolutely right.
That was his project, was building this plane.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so there it is without the skin on it. And I think, I would just stop there. I would love to have that like somehow on display somewhere. It's so beautiful, just the sort of architecture of what's under the skin on one of these things.
Yeah,
it was kind of a shame to cover it. But that's when he finished everything short of the skin. And that's him and a buddy of his.
That's amazing.
That poor guy probably got roped into holding some metal parts too.
You can tell all of your father's friends from like the welding burns on their forearms.
The guy who's sitting in the cockpit is a patient of mine, and I just fixed. He's now in his 80s.
Yeah, this is a great story.
So I put a knee replacement in him a year and a half ago, and he's despite his age, he is sharp as a tack and still inventing things. And he was fascinated with this project that my dad was doing, and they hung out a lot together during that time.
this circular community of like people involved in the development of your car and with a medical overlap is that's fascinating.
I'm also just in awe, and this applies to your project as well, of anyone who has a 12-year project that they finish, because like any of my projects that last longer than say like 12 hours, it might as well not exist anymore because it just doesn't get done.
Well, I think that the same thing happened. I think that the same thing happened to me as happened to my dad, in that there were two sort of elements to that. The first element is being naive and starting it thinking this will be a year, 2 years, you know.
You almost need that.
Yeah, you have to. If I knew, like I could never do it now because I it's just too big of a project. And so I naively thought it won't be that big time-wise, it won't be that big cost-wise, so I'm going to jump into it. I know Dad felt that about this.
Sure.
Then the second element is you get into it deep enough that you're like, well, what am I going to do now? I can't quit.
Right.
And take a Sawzall and put this in a dumpster somewhere. That just can't happen. I got too much time and money invested in it.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like this point of no return that comes after the naive part. And so that, I think those two elements are what got him through that.
Yeah.
And definitely I can say got me through the car. The naivete to get it started, and then just kind of the fear of, oh man, I can't stop now. I got too much into this.
The project event horizon, if you will.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's so full of metaphors: money, black holes, etc.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And
so that's the finished product.
That's amazing. Who did the design on the wings?
So that is a design that existed in World War I.
Oh no way! To like obfuscate the view, or
from above, that looks like the land below you.
Sure.
This plane was in a group of planes that were called the Flying Circus, and that was a squadron of German fighter pilots who were really different from everybody else. Everybody else's planes were painted in the standard German paint scheme.
Sure.
But this group of guys, 10 or 20 guys, headed by the most famous pilot of that era, which was the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen. His group of guys said, forget that. We're going to paint our planes crazy colors, and we're going to put the name of like our girlfriend, Lo. Lo is Ernest Udet's girlfriend. So he painted her name on the side. That was unheard of back then. But everything was unheard of. Planes were like 4 years old. It was brand new technology.
Well, so was camouflage, right? That was the first war where camouflage was a big thing.
And so that's got a camouflage on the, if you're looking from above, the wings look camouflage. Yeah. But the paint scheme, a red plane is crazy. And, the Red Baron, his plane was red. And other guys in that squadron had planes of all different colors and funky designs.
Okay.
And they were just crazy guys, that wanted to be contrarian compared to the other outfits. And I don't know, I guess the German military put up with that because they were a very successful squadron that had a lot of victories.
Sure.
So I think that bought them some leeway in the way they painted their machines. And this was his paint scheme.
That's amazing. The camouflage to automotive overlap is so great because I'm a huge fan of Dazzle camouflage. Yeah, the old ship camouflage with the big black and white. And how they obfuscate prototype cars today, like with all the swirls of black and white. Yeah. Like the camouflage car.
Yeah, there's on the tail of the plane, there are the letters "Du das nicht," which means in German, don't do that, or that when you get shot as a pilot, you always got shot from behind. So if a plane was on your tail, that's when you were in danger. And on the back of his, you probably should have put it in English, though. It says, don't do that. It's just hilarious that these guys were kind of clowning around at the same time that they're out killing people and getting killed.
Sure.
I also want to point out like the other nice overlap between like planes of this era and like the warfare from this era, and your dad's project and your project is like in World War I, the aviators then were just like dudes off the street who were like, hey, that looks fun. I'm going to do that.
Yes.
And they just did it. Yeah. And like there wasn't like a regimented process for becoming an aviator then. It was just you're crazy enough to do it.
Yeah. And a lot of people weren't crazy enough to get in a thing like that and take it up in the air. And the death rate for just accidents in training was super high.
Sure.
Nobody knew anything about planes back then. Planes
they were astronauts.
New. Yeah, exactly. They were astronauts. Yeah.
It was no training.
Yes.
Trial and error, and maybe death.
Being as it was a war and they needed a huge volume of these guys, it wasn't even as metered as developing an astronaut. It was like, give me 100 guys. I know we're going to lose 50 of them, but the other 50 will go out and do what we need them to do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It was brutal that way.
Well, and I think that's why a lot of like car people and motorsport people in particular, like there's a lot of overlap between that era of aviation, interest in that era of aviation, and interest in like vintage cars racing and stuff like that.
And it's kind of that Wild West gearhead. Things were being invented then and created then,
right?
And that's really neat. That period of time in aviation, and years before that period of time in automobiles, but there's a lot of overlap there.
Right, absolutely. Which brings us to the other piece of the Venn diagram that Dave was talking about. The art
artistic
side.
piece,
So I was explaining that when I was growing up, I had my dad. So my dad, we talked a lot about him and his passion, which was building this plane and building things in general. And my mom, on the other hand, was an artist, and she was oil painting all the time. And we were always recruited as kids to paint on her canvases because her instructor didn't want her to ever paint on a blank white sheet. She had to have some kind of pigment on there, even if it was the wrong color. He just felt that gave the piece depth. So my job a lot of times was to paint something, even if it was just all one color on the canvas, so she could then make a portrait of it. So I got to use oils a lot, and I sort of became comfortable painting portraits. And this is a portrait of a guy that I've known my whole life. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He ended up hiring me and giving me my job where I work now. He fixed my broken arm when I was 6, and then when he was 70, I did a shoulder replacement on him. So we went full circle together. And when he retired, I did this piece, and it hangs in our office now.
That's fantastic.
He's a great guy.
Yeah. It's a beautiful painting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, you have a lot of talent. That's for sure. So we were talking about artistic influences, Jackson Pollock.
Yeah. And the reason I put this in here is that I found a parallel between automobiles and art in that there are very different and specific genres that people tend to like and other genres that people tend to hate.
Exactly.
And, so this is a genre
be very
that's
polarizing.
Yeah, exactly. So this is obviously abstract stuff. Jackson Pollock, a famous artist who has a lot of followers. It's not what I like in art. I probably wouldn't hang this in my house, but a lot of people are passionate about this. And then the other examples are just a Picasso and these other styles, which are all very legitimate, high level art, but just so different from each other.
Right.
And the same is true in cars when you look at the different sort of genres of cars. And
absolutely.
People who are passionate in their little niche, but not necessarily that interested in other niches. And when I was doing this project, I at one point I thought about commercializing it and selling these cars. And one of the flaws there is that my little niche in cars, the things I like, which are 50s, 60s sports cars, that's not universally what everyone likes, So the market isn't as big as you think when you're in that rabid kind of enthusiasm part.
Like an internal bias, right?
Absolutely.
To project
bias.
your likes onto somebody else.
Which I'm always guilty of doing. I'm always assumed that everybody likes what I like, which just isn't the case. It isn't the case in art, and it isn't the case in cars.
But I that's really funny because I think that loops back to some medical training because you're specifically taught that bias is something you need to be super aware of when it comes to diagnosis.
Right.
And all of these outside influences versus just what you assume.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. And it's something I have to, I always have to watch myself because I tend toward that. I guess humans just tend toward that. It's natural.
It's our nature. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So a Monet and
there's Rembrandt. This is more the style I like, which is a realist style. But that's just what appeals to me. It doesn't appeal to everybody. And,
right.
And I think all the next slides are cars and the sort of theme of what the different examples of car genres would be, some of which I don't like that much and some I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
So that brings me to, let's go to the car, because you kind of touch on a bunch of different car cultures, car subcultures in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your your kind of upbringing in cars or whatever, your first entry into cars, where did you start out, and did you ever dabble in other pieces of car culture? Did you get into driving, or did you get into different eras
I never
of cars?
competed as a driver. And again, I kind of came at this from the art standpoint.
Sure.
So I rather than having the goal to make a car that cornered and would beat everybody on the track, that never was a priority. The priority was to achieve something that was aesthetically what I wanted.
Right.
And I wanted something along the lines of a series of cars, the photographs of which are coming up, that were these 50s and 60s sports cars that to me just epitomized the art of an automobile.
You had visual and emotional benchmarks versus like technical or speed benchmarks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
I really like that. Yeah. Yeah. So these are just some, like, talking about some, like, you know, there's muscle car people, there's, you know,
hot rod people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tuner car people.
Yep, exactly. The rallycross folks.
Yeah. Yep.
The vaping Super Bros.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're all they're totally legitimate, you know.
Right.
But they're very different, and there isn't always a lot of crossover. I can respect these cars because they're engineering masterpieces, all of them. But you know, it isn't where I put my time and energy into these subsets necessarily.
Yeah. Ian and I, like, being that, like, we focus on automotive culture with this show, like, we went off-roading for a day with the Rocky Mountain Automotive Press, and like, we're track rats, like, that's what we like to do. But like, off-roading, it was like, okay, we get it, like, you know, we can see why someone would want to do this. It's not for us, but I think that level of empathy, or like just being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, is really important when it comes to overall enthusiasm.
Absolutely. And for design, I think a lot of novelty in design comes from that cross-pollinization.
Absolutely.
Of going off the reservation and doing something that at first you're like, this isn't going to be for me, but then you're like, okay, well, I took away a couple elements that I'm going to build into what I'm doing next.
Right.
You know,
right.
There are smart people in each of these genres doing amazing things.
Right.
And you can't write off any of these. They're brilliant. There's brilliance in every one of these.
Absolutely.
And a lot to be learned and taken away from.
That's one of my favorite ways of explaining car culture to non-car people, is like the analogy of everything interesting that's ever happened in all of human civilization was the result of like information sharing between two different cultures. You know, like pasta, you know, like that wouldn't exist without two cultures kind of interacting together. And, you know, so things like a resto mod, you know, wouldn't exist without a Marco Polo between those two subcultures kind of talking to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I always love that whenever anything like that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so these were some other, like, kind of getting more towards like what you were shooting for.
This was sort of what I see as the aesthetic, you know, highest level.
This is a Ferrari.
Yeah, I think that's a 250.
Yeah,
which is just such a gorgeous car, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and aiming low, you know, only the most expensive car in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So
dime a dozen Ferraris.
Yeah. So that was something to look at and lust after, but realize that I'm never going to own. You know.
Sure. A pragmatic approach.
Yes, exactly. But it was cool to look at, and I mean, to me, that is what like an art connoisseur sees when they see a Monet or something. This to me means what that does to them. This is like, whatever the little thing in your brain is that gets tickled by an artistic masterpiece. This does it for me. It's just so beautiful from every angle. I mean, as a car design person, this is done right. It's in my opinion, for my tastes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this is another great car, design-wise, a BMW 507. So in the 50s, BMW wanted to make a car competitive with the Gullwing, which was a very successful Mercedes car at the time. Yeah. And this was their attempt. It didn't work commercially, but I think aesthetically, I just love the look of it.
Achingly gorgeous.
It really is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Just a gorgeous little car.
Yeah.
And that's the 58 Corvette, which was sort of GM's response to what was going on in car design at the time. A guy named Harley Earl designed this car and a couple other generations of Corvettes. And they get criticized for being a little too chromy and a little too Art Deco-y, but that really is, I love that look. I like that look about these cars.
Somebody's always going to criticize.
Of course, People tear my car apart all the time, and I totally appreciate that. It's not for everybody. You know?
But that's art. Yeah.
There's a gorgeous car here. This is the Mercedes, the 300 convertible version of the Gullwing. I love convertibles, and one of the requirements for a car for me, it has to be a convertible. Living in Denver, I mean, the weather's so good here. You can drive with the top down so often. It's just, you got to have a convertible.
Any Mercedes with stacked headlights, vertically stacked headlights, right?
Give it to me. Yeah, I'll take it.
I saw a sedan, an older sedan with stacked headlights the other day, and like you just catch the corner of it, and it's like, they're beautiful. Beautiful design, right?
Yeah.
And
then the Volvo, a pedestrian little company like Volvo, makes a masterpiece like this.
Right.
And I don't know if they outsourced their design. I can't remember, But that is just a beautiful car. It's a Volvo. It isn't a convertible, so it's a non-starter for me, but I couldn't pass it up in this slideshow because it's just gorgeous.
Absolutely. Like I would put this in the running with anything else as far as design goes.
Me too. And I'm surprised it wasn't more successful commercially because it's so pretty.
And the thing is too, you see them.
Yeah, they're out.
You still see them around.
Yeah.
So they're still like not so valuable that they're just locked away in garages and they're still running.
I'd love to get one someday and maybe cut the roof off and make it a convertible.
There you go. Yeah, just find the rattiest one you can on Craigslist.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure people are like having a heart attack about sacrificing one of these rare pieces to hack it up and make it a convertible. That's probably blasphemy for the Volvo cult. But anyway, I acknowledge that that's a gorgeous car.
Yeah.
A beautiful, beautiful car.
Yeah.
And there's the AC Cobra.
Of course.
And they made two styles of these. This is the earlier one, which is the smaller engined version, 283, I think can't remember the size of the engine, but it's the smaller engine, still a V8.
Sure.
But it had this flat sides. It wasn't as big and muscular looking as the 427, which came later.
Right.
And this, I actually like this. It's a little more understated design and a little more British car looking than the other ones.
A little more AC than
more AC than Cobra. Yeah. So I think that's a gorgeous car, and that definitely influenced you. It's obvious how that influenced my design a ton.
Yeah.
I love that car, but a real AC Cobra of that vintage, especially the old flat-sided early ones, just out of reach for me financially.
Yeah.
It's funny though because the front of your car is more the later style Cobra. It's more 427.
Well, one of the things that happened when we'll see in a minute that I end up early in my life buying an old Corvette is I struggled with overheating a lot.
Right.
So I knew that whatever car I designed was going to have a huge mouth on the front of it to cool that radiator. And I would never have an overheating problem. So that was one thing that was going to be a part of the design. Even if it looked crappy, it was going to have a big old opening in the front.
Sure.
So I guess that's a little piece of pragmatism in something else that's pure, art.
Absolutely. Yeah, a little zoology with the largemouth bass.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the great car here, the Porsche 550, made famous by... what's the actor's name? I forgot now.
James Dean.
James Dean, of course, who died in his. But a great track car that the rich people could have as their family driver or their driving car.
I've seen more of those on trailers than I've seen driving on the street.
The real ones are just like all these cars, just out of reach, expensive.
Yeah.
And, but it's so cool looking. I just love the look of that car.
Right? Yeah. And of course the E-Type.
Gorgeous car. Malcolm Sayer, who's the designer of this car, is a genius. I mean, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous cigar-shaped, graceful, just the right mixture of feminine and masculine sort of feel, and it just, I love that car. It's gorgeous.
And just instantly recognizable too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's iconic. It's iconic for cars.
Yeah.
Because even like people who aren't into cars know what that is.
Yes. Yeah.
But the differences between like that BMW and the Ferrari, even some of the similar shaped Ferraris and like the AC, like people wouldn't necessarily know what they are.
Right.
But that transcends just siloed automotive enthusiasm.
Yeah, it really does. Yep. Yeah, it really does. It's a work of art. It really is.
Yeah.
So which of these do you get the most questions of like, is that what that is?
Definitely.
With your car?
The thing that, and it kind of bothers me, is most people when they see my car, if they know about cars enough, they'll say, "Oh, is that a Cobra kit car?"
Oh, okay.
And that just is like, oh no, it's not. When I was designing it, I really wanted this to be like an original design, and it kind of I don't like the idea of taking someone else's design and copying it without their permission and making it for a lot cheaper and selling it. Sort of like, when you go to New York and they have all the watches on sale that are knockoffs on Rolexes and stuff. Right. I think that's criminal for the people who really designed it and deserve the credit for it. So to think that somebody thinks this car is a kit car knockoff of somebody else's design I just don't like that at all.
I will give you that I completely understand the frustration with that, but the thing that I think of is like for the general public's knowledge, Cobra kit car is probably the first thing that they'd think of.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like that's kind of at the top of like what like popular opinion might be.
Yeah.
You know, and like, yeah, I think it's almost an honor that like they would
I'll try to think of it that way.
They could go from seeing your car to Cobra,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah, you're right. If they can even put the word Cobra in the description, it's an
Right.
honor for me. You're right. That's
Yeah.
I should look at it that way.
Yeah, can you bring up the car again really quick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
As we go.
Yeah. There's your beautiful 57 or 58?
58. Yeah, 58.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, we can circle back. These are some of the drawings that you did. These are fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah. So for a long time, because I didn't have the resources to buy any car.
Sure.
It was all just drawing cars and studying cars and making
Absolutely.
clay models of cars and just trying to, with my hands, get a feeling for what these curves were that I could see and identify them as beautiful, but I really didn't understand them until I started drawing them.
Yeah. The exercise shows.
You had to put in the hours on paper and in clay to really, for me to learn and sort of internalize what these guys were achieving and what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Old Austin Healey.
Yeah. You have to throw that in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this is yours.
That's it. Yeah. So that was the idea.
Right.
Was to make this, which is a mashup of all those ones that we just scrolled through on the drawings. And it also had some things in it that I really wanted. I wanted a hard top that stowed in the car. I wanted a fuel injected motor with the air intake up front, so the hood scoop had to come way down close to the nose, like the Austin Healey, and some practical things, but mainly just the car that I thought was like the ideal look.
Yeah.
And totally acknowledging that that's, it's what I love because I got to pick every square inch of the thing.
Right.
And someone else may look at that and say, I would have done the front differently. I would have done the back differently. I totally am okay with that. But for me, this by definition is like the ultimate car.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you have a question about the design that you wanted to get to the picture of it?
Oh no, just I was really excited to talk about the influences of it.
Yeah.
Because that's to me the most fascinating part about it, because I think later on you showed us this slideshow earlier, and there's pictures of other people who have done similar things.
Yes.
And the thing that struck me about the difference between those and yours was that kind of like a really cool band that you listen to and you're like, oh, I hear a little bit of that and a little bit of that, but
Right.
I've never heard anyone put all of those things together. Yours kind of like borrows from lots of little things, whereas a lot of other cars that you see were similar projects, it's like a reimagining of a E-Type or a reimagining of a Cobra or whatever.
Right.
Whereas I think it's harder to pin down with yours a little bit.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Like with some of the other ones, you can tell like, oh, that's a Corvette with a twist.
Yeah.
Like, so it's X car with some kind of twist.
Right.
With yours, it just seems like all of these, like, I don't know, like, yeah, like the stew that you've made is really like its own thing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me.
So I want to play an FMK cars kind of based on that idea.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So when I first saw it, I thought, there's some Cobra in there. And for whatever reason, I thought I landed on like some 60s Maseratis with that hood scoop.
Yep.
And then there's definitely some E-Type and stuff like that in there. So what I want to do is play an FMK cars based on the modern equivalents of your influences.
Awesome. Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
FMK Cars is a game Dave and I play on the show. It's based off the classic game Fuck, Marry, Kill, except we play it with cars instead of people because we're nice. So in this game, fuck means you drive it for a day.
Right.
M means you marry it. It's a new daily driver. K means you kill it. It goes to the crusher immediately.
Okay. I'm ready.
So the first one will be a C7 Corvette Z6.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, let's see.
We'll do it with the crazy wing and the whole thing.
There we go. Yeah.
Can you see okay around the camera?
I can see it great.
Yeah.
Yep. And I know that car pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's got basically the engine from the red car,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
But supercharged.
Yes.
And then crazy aero and all that sort of
And
stuff.
great engineering on the suspension and all that.
Right.
Yep.
For sure.
All right. So
Now
the
I get to see all three before I make my
Absolutely.
choices,
Yep.
right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yep. So the next one will be a Jaguar F-Type V8.
Yeah.
'Cause there's definitely some E-Type in your...
Yes. Yeah.
And we'll give you the convertible.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No
I'll need the
problem.
convertible.
Yeah.
You can have the convertible version of all three of these if you
Okay.
want.
I'm thinking the
Yeah.
convertible vet too.
There we go.
'cause
Yeah.
They make the convertible Z6.
Okay.
And then the last one, so I wanted to go Italian because there's definitely some Italian
Yes.
in
Absolutely.
there.
Yep.
But I thought actually the next evolution, the true evolution, I think there's a lot more Ferrari 250 Yeah, GTO in there, so that would have been a Ferrari F12. But that would have been way too much better, way too better than the other one. So I went Maserati Grand Coupe.
Okay.
We'll go Grand Spider, I guess, but Grand Cabrio.
Grand Cabrio? Yeah. Okay.
So that's the older one. That's like 2001 to 2007
Yeah.
era.
Let's see if we can find a good picture of it. Let me.
How about that one right there?
Yeah, there we go.
That'll work.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, convertible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I know what I want to do.
Okay. All right.
Okay, that's going to the crusher.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Maserati just
Yes,
right off
yes.
the bat. Okay. Okay.
Just because its look, I think, is too homogenous with a lot of other things that I see on the street.
Okay. Sure.
And
sure.
one of the frustrations for me and cars is that we have over years and decades figured out really what the shape of a car needs to be aerodynamic,
Right.
and to have crush zones that work efficiently to save people's lives. And unfortunately, that's led us all to one look.
Yeah.
And a lot of cars, they just wear different badges, but they're the same body style with minor modifications. This obviously is a pretty big deviation from what I'm talking about, but it's close enough
Right.
compared to the other two cars.
This would be the more pedestrian of the three choices
exactly.
for sure.
So, and I'm just talking as a car design guy right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that design to me seems the most boring.
Yeah.
Even though it's a great car, and all you owners out there of Maseratis, I'm not at all trying to offend you. I would love to be able to make a car half as nice as that. But since I got to send one,
Right.
that one's going to the crusher.
Okay.
I get it.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I'd
That's a great
probably
answer.
do the same thing. Yeah. Okay. So then that leaves the Corvette and the Jag.
So the Jag would be my daily driver.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm fascinated with Jags. Obviously, I love the E-types, and before that, the C and D types.
Yeah.
And there's even a new, this isn't it, but I've seen it in the parking lot at work, a new Jag that's even more radical looking than this, that is just gorgeous. So I love Jag, and so this would be my daily driver.
Nice.
And then this would be the one I'd use for a day and just
Yeah.
horse around with and have lots of fun. But I probably wouldn't marry it.
Okay.
I get that.
What's really funny about that is the Z06 has notorious overheating problems.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay. Well, that's
is-
Corvette revisited for me
Yeah,
then.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Of all the three cars, it's not the Maserati or the Jag out of those three that has an overheating problem.
Right.
Yes, yeah, right. It's the American-built GM. Yeah.
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 Well, I like that.
I definitely want, and it was interesting. One of the things I needed to achieve in this car that I designed is I didn't want a car that would leave you at the side of the road 1 out of 5 trips,
Yeah.
There's just nothing more frustrating than that, especially for somebody who's not that mechanical. And when I was thinking about marketing the car, that was going to be one of the marketing sort of features.
It's
was that-
reliability.
Yeah, reliable.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
straight up LS3 Corvette motor, nothing that you couldn't plug in at a gas station and get diagnostics on.
Right.
And I just can't stand a car, no matter how beautiful, if it's a pain in the butt.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like dating the most pretty girl in high school. There's a lot of baggage that comes with that, even though the aesthetics is there. So I would rather have a car that works great, and just every time you turn the key, it fires, and it just doesn't give you any problems.
Yeah, we've on the show we've talked quite a bit about reliability versus ownership, and I'm the first one that's taken the plunge more towards reliability out of the two of us with my old man Infiniti sedan. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you're using it for a driver and you have a job where you got to get there on time, it's tough not to have a car that does reliability.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm an idiot, and the practicality chip just is like
it's
deficient.
subjugated, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you're the one out of us that has children too. Yeah. I don't know. I rage fixed a water pump on my previous Saab just one time, and it was like, that's it. Like that's it. Yeah. Snapping clutch cables.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But I have an FMK Cars for you. I have another one that I want to take more to the artistic end.
Okay.
So let's see here. Let me pull up some tabs here. I'm going to close that out. Okay. So obviously, you're aware of the BMW Art Cars.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay. So this is going to be a trifecta of BMW Art Cars.
Okay.
So first up is going to be the David Hockney 850. Let's see if we can find a good picture of it here.
Okay.
There we go. There's the Hockney 850. This is the one that on the other side, it shows a silhouette of a driver. Let me see if I can find a better picture of it. We typically stick to free use images, but we'll
Okay.
Forego that.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's the Hockney
Oh, yeah, okay.
850. I don't know if you're a fan of the 850.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's not my top car, but
Sure.
again, all these cars are so awesome in
Yeah.
the way they're engineered and designed.
Yeah. Let's see here. So we have the Hockney 850. Then we're going to do the Liechtenstein 320. 320. I don't know where you stand on Liechtenstein from an artistic perspective. Yeah. But
Like Roy Lichtenstein?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
I didn't know there was any car version of that.
Yeah. So he designed. He did the paintwork
No
for
kidding. Is
this.
he still alive? This is the guy who did like the
The big pop art comic.
looking
Yep,
stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
okay. With the dots.
Yep.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
huge.
nice.
Halftones. Yeah.
I had
love
no
that
idea he
car.
was still
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This was in 03, I think. That He
Okay.
did this. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh no. This was 1977.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's an old car.
Yeah.
That's like a 3.0, I think.
Yeah. And then lastly, we're going to go for the, I'm going to give you the Frank Stella. That was another 3 Series, CSL. Let's see here. Yeah, BMW and Art have always had an interesting relationship. Let's see here. So yeah, here's the Frank Stella
Okay.
CSL.
Okay.
Absolutely wacky.
Yeah.
But
gorgeous, though.
Yeah. So out of those 3,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
This is tough, and I'll start by just saying that this idea of putting these radical graphics on the cars, I'm not a fan of, only because for me it's the lines on the car that are the art,
Right.
and these distract from my eye those
The
lines.
contours of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny, when I did my car, I didn't put any stripes on it like
Sure.
Cobras have.
Yeah.
Because I just want the body work to be the art,
To stand
and
on its
not
own.
to be distracted by any stripes or
A
two-tones
solid
or anything.
color.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that. I get that. Yeah.
So I'm coming from a very sort of prejudiced place on this.
Yeah.
So that right there, the art isn't that distracting to me.
Okay.
It's got some crazy looking wings that make me think that I could get up to high speeds and still get good traction. So I'm going to do this as my one day,
Okay.
my F.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then that leaves the Liechtenstein.
Yeah, I like that for my daily driver. It's
Okay,
For some
okay.
reason, that art seems to flow with the body a little better. It
Yeah.
doesn't really distract from it.
Right.
So I'm going to use that as my daily driver, and it also has cool wings and stuff that would make it fun to drive.
Yeah.
And then the first one you showed me, to me,
The Hockney,
that
yeah.
one is too distracting. The art on that car. I can't really even tell the fender lines very well on it
Sure.
because the art is so bold.
Right.
Again, I hate to take a beautiful thing like that and put it in a crusher, but since I got to do one, that would be the one I
get
would
it.
choose.
I get it. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it is an 8 Series, so it's kind of like a Ford Probe at some
Right,
point.
yeah.
But yeah.
And I'm trying to ignore that part and just look at
Right.
the skin. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
I like that. I think the BMW Art Car project was really cool because it was originally for like race cars.
Yeah.
So that would be the race livery for
Yeah.
the,
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
racing series
Yeah.
that they
And
that
I
they
think
did.
this is the latest one that they've done. It's they've done a few since I've been aware of it, but it's a Jeff Koons BMW.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that one's really cool too.
It's very dynamic looking. It
Yeah.
looks like it's going 100 miles an hour even though it's sitting still.
Yeah.
And it's funny because this reminds me a ton of what we were just talking about, which is the flying circus. I mean, this is basically
Yeah.
the flying circus of cars.
Yeah,
And instead
right.
of going to battle in the air, they went to battle on the track.
Yeah.
And this cocky kind of like totally different from everybody else. I think it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that. I like that way to bring it back.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to the history of the car, the Varsity Roadster. So from going sketches,
Yeah.
to like physical manifestation, like summoning something.
Yes.
What was that process?
So it happened to be that of all the cars we looked at before, the only one I could really afford to own, and it was even a stretch, was a Corvette. And the only way I could get one of those old Corvettes was to get a real basket case one. So it meant that I had to learn a little bit about how to build cars. And that one we showed, the drawing of the black one. And it was very, very fortunate that I landed on...
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
So that was what I bought. That was after I fixed it up. So I bought it for a pretty reasonable price. because it was pretty beat up.
And when was this? This was like
this was when I was a resident, so this would have been in the late 80s.
Okay.
As a medical resident, salary, you don't have a lot of money, but everything I owned, I would starve to put money into buying this car.
Sure.
So I saved everything I got. I got a basket case 58 Corvette, and this is, without too much work, this is what it looked like. And I just loved that car. And I was in Los Angeles at the time, and as I was telling you guys, I would go to a restaurant, and they would move the Ferrari out of the way to put this car up front. And every time I came out of anywhere, people were all around the car. And that happened so many times, it started me thinking that, this isn't just me that appreciates this look. There are a lot of people out there like the look of this car. And people would always say, God, I wish they designed cars like that now. Why don't they design cars like this now?
Yep.
And so I was like, well, I'm going to design something like this now. I'm going to make a car that has this aesthetic, but it's going to be modern underneath. It'll have, won't overheat. It'll have, an aluminum block engine and disc brakes instead of drum brakes and good suspension and all the stuff that we take for granted now, but they didn't have back then.
Right.
So that was sort of the idea, is to hit that home run with art like these guys did, or at least try to, but have it be a reliable modern car that you could drive every day. And it just every time somebody would Google over that car, it put another log on the fire for me.
Absolutely.
That this was a legitimate project that could even be marketable. And I had, pipe dreams of marketing the car and selling them and all that stuff, which never materialized. But that was what the motivation was.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, the old adage, like sometimes you have to go there just to come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, the next chapter was that it was so fortunate that this ended up being the car that I chose because I wrecked it.
Right. Yeah.
And,
we'll get to that.
Picture of that coming up. Yeah. There was the wreck.
Yeah.
So that's after I took off the piece that I damaged.
Okay.
And had this been any of the other cars which are made out of metal, I would have really been in trouble, because tooling metal or repairing metal for a novice like me was not possible.
And some of those cars were handmade.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like wheel, and there's just no way it would be. It'd just be astronomically expensive to try to get it repaired.
The molds may have caught fire because they were just wood,
exactly.
right? Just hammered aluminum.
Put a piece of aluminum on a piece of wood. So luckily, just a twist of fate, this car is made out of plastic, and it's assembled the same way a little plastic model would be assembled, like you made in third grade. You just sand off the paint and find where the parts come together and saw off that particular piece. And then the Corvette hobby is very strong, so you can overnight Federal Express a new replacement piece that's modern and remanufactured, which is what the next slide is the remanufactured corner piece, and just glued it there with some special glue they make for Corvette fiberglass.
It's serendipitous.
Totally.
Like that it happened that way.
If it hadn't happened this way, I never would have thought about building a whole car.
Right.
I had the idea because I wanted to design a car, but I thought I'd make a little clay model, and that's as far as it would go. But doing this, I was like, I'm at full scale here. And it's pretty easy. It took a day to fix this.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple more days to do the paint and everything. But the actual body thing took a day.
Snapping it in place.
It was like, dang, that was easy. And I've never done this before, and it came out fine. I think the next picture shows the piece bonded in.
Yeah, look at that.
And, if you just take your time and sand it, it comes out great. And then the white paint job's very forgiving. I painted it up.
Yeah.
And
all the while your wheels are turning.
Totally.
About how you could map this into something in the future.
This succeeded, this little operation, the more I realized, hey, I could. And I'd done it about the same time I was doing some sculpting in clay and learning how to make molds from sculpted clay pieces, and then use the molds to make the real thing. And so I was making molds and learning how to pull molds off of shapes, and it all just kind of came together. It never would have happened if I'd had a metal car.
Right.
So a Corvette, that was just pure luck, or bad luck, I guess, depending.
No, that's
it led to the project.
That's a life, lemonade kind of story. Yeah,
exactly,
for sure. Yeah.
I'm also just impressed by anyone who managed to fix their car pre-YouTube. It's just like amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, it was either fix it or it would be like that for the rest of its life.
True.
I couldn't afford to get it fixed. So, and I loved the car. I loved driving it so much. I was going to do whatever it took. If I had to make a paper mache corner piece, I was going to do that. I was going to get it back on the road as soon as possible.
Yeah. Just welded license plates together.
Exactly.
To
just hammer out some carpet or
something.
Yeah. You didn't have the benefit of hearing someone like in Tennessee go, "Hey, y'all, today I'm going to show you how to make potato soup and fix a Corvette."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No,
so that's it with all the chrome stuck back on it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it came out great. You know? And so
that's so fantastic how all these pieces come together.
Yeah,
I love that.
Fortunate that it was like that. And then now I'm like hot to trot. I've made a clay model. I love it.
Yeah.
I know how to work at scale in fiberglass now. So now I'm off to the races. And this is the clay model that I used. And I picked a scale that models at the model shop are made.
Yeah.
And so I could get little wheels to put on it, little lights to put on it, and little bumpers and the glass and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of dress it up to make sure I liked every way that it came together. And I just loved it. You know, I kind of thought making the clay model would be the death of the project because it wouldn't. A lot of things in my life, they look great in my head, but they don't look that great when you make them in real life.
I get that.
So I expected the model to kind of come out. That doesn't excite me, you know.
Sure.
But the model really excited me, and I loved the way it looked. It was really just exactly what I thought a sports car should look like.
Right.
50s, 60s styling, but a little different from the ones that existed. You know, the Corvette I owned was a little long and big looking from some aspects, and this was smaller and more nimble looking.
Yeah.
Masculine and feminine at the same time. It was a little more beefy and aggressive than the E-Type, which can look a little fragile from some vantage points.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with the car, and I'm not at all trying to say that it's the greatest looking car, because for a lot of people wouldn't agree with that, but for me, I like it was the greatest looking car ever.
Absolutely.
Well, and it definitely changed a bit from here. Now that I got a better look at this, you have the kind of Cobra, you have the Cobra bumpers.
Well, I thought
and the
I
hood
had
scoop
to have bumpers, and it turned out that you don't. And the thing that's bad for me in bumpers, as we'll talk about later, the rear of the car folds open to let the hardtop go in. So the bumpers couldn't attach to the frame. They would just have to be put on the body. And bumpers on the body aren't really bumpers at all.
Right.
So I had to ditch the bumpers because I couldn't make them act like real bumpers.
Sure.
And without the bumpers, I thought it looked even cooler.
Yeah.
So the bumpers make it look older. And more vintage looking, and I like them in some ways, but I end up ditching the bumpers. But at this stage, I didn't realize that was going to be the case.
I think without the bumpers, it adds another layer to the, oh my goodness, what is that kind of look, you know?
Those vertical bumpers on the front are very Cobra-y, you know? So I think that would even get me more Cobra kick car comments, which frustrate me no end.
Well, and the hood scoop being up high.
That's Cobra-y too. Yeah.
We're going to get you a vanity license plate that's just not a Cobra.
Yeah, exactly.
So how'd you land? I'm fascinated by that hood scoop because it's such an interesting design element because it's very not an American car. It's not Corvette, and it's not really an English car thing either. Yeah, which are the two other main influences. It was more Italian.
Yeah, that
BMW.
Was again trying to be more mechanical and engineering minded. I'd read a lot about how I was trying to learn, like scrambling to learn how cars worked at this point. So here I am, like this sort of faker artist guy, hobbyist artist, and I've got the art part comfortable as far as the shape of the car. Right. But now I'm like, okay, the next step, I'm going to need to learn how to build a car, like what cars are made of and how they work. And I read a ton, and one of the things I read was about how an internal combustion engine works, and that you mix fuel and oxygen and you ignite that little bomb, and that's what gives the energy to make the car move. And the more fuel you can put in and the more oxygen you can put in, the bigger bang you get, which means horsepower. Mm-hmm. So for fuel, that's easy. You just increase the diameter of your hose or the pump behind it. You can put lots of fuel into a car, but
air's the tricky part.
Air is tricky. How do you get more air in there? And that's what superchargers and turbochargers or all these forced air systems are all about. But another way to do it is to make the air that enters your intake manifold as oxygen dense as possible. And oxygen density changes a lot with temperature.
It does, yeah.
So I wanted this is a long answer to your question, but I wanted the air entering my motor to come from a place that wasn't hot. Right. And the Cobra intake manifold or intake opening in the hood was kind of over the boiler room, over everything else. So I wanted my air to come in at the nose of the engine before anything got hot, which meant that the air intake hole had to be very close to the front of the car. And, come to find out, that's what all the people are doing now with with commercial cars. Right. And they're doing it for a reason. You get a little bit more oxygen density in the colder air that hasn't got hot from the engine.
Yeah.
It's just so it's interesting to hear the different reasons you had for doing things, because so many of your decisions were purely aesthetic.
Yes, yeah.
And then every once in a while you're like, well, but I still want it to be fast.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Right.
And I got to admit, if I when I modeled the longer scoop, I loved it.
Yeah.
If it had looked bad, I would have just said, screw it. I'm going to have
Right.
a car that doesn't have as much horsepower, but
Right.
it looks cool. So coolness was still the number one priority.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a nice instance where I thought that the practical or the sort of pragmatic mechanical solution actually was more aesthetic than without it. And that was the same with the humps. We talked about the humps behind the seats.
Yeah.
That was something that started out as a practical solution, and then it turned out to be an artistic solution that heightened the art of the car. So, and that was, this hood scoop's a great example of that too.
Right. Yeah, no, I love where you landed on the double hump.
Double hump, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a very it makes it look like it has racing pedigree, because that's usually something you see on old Le Mans cars.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep. So so that's the final. Shouldn't say final, but that's
This is
kind
the foam one, right?
Yeah, that's a solid piece of foam with Bondo on top of it, and some lights and windshield glass put in place to sort of get an idea of what the thing was going to look like.
Yeah.
So how many years in is this?
So this started the full scale started in 1995, and this is 2002.
Okay.
And,
Wow. Yeah.
So, but remember, I'm working like at night a couple hours,
Sure.
on the weekends a couple hours.
Yeah.
So, if I really dedicated myself to full time, it wouldn't have taken nearly that much time.
Okay.
But it took forever because I was dabbling.
Life. Yeah.
but still, that's impressive.
Yeah.
From here to what's sitting in the driveway? So you've lost the bumpers.
Yep.
I think the fog lights are a little different.
No, they're the same.
They're the same?
Yep. Those might actually even be the ones. Actually,
that's
those
funny.
I think are on the black car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then
those are motorcycle headlights that I
Okay.
needed for little small diameter fog lights. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the windshield, that's already the Corvette windshield?
Yeah, so that's Corvette glass. Yeah, we were talking before about one of the challenges was to make sure that after I put all this time and money into this thing, it would be allowed to be put on the street. So I had met way before this stage, kind of at the small clay model stage, I met with the Department of Transportation, and one of their stickler things is DOT approved glass and lights.
Yeah.
So I looked around and found I wanted that curved glass look,
Yeah.
and the Corvette 56 through 62 glass is like that, and it's readily available. You can get a brand new piece today because that hobby is so strong. So that's the piece of glass that worked the best for me.
I love that you can find a Corvette glass and have it like overnighted
Yes.
to you, but to get a shift knob replacement for my 1999 Saab Viggen, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had some other taillights I liked better than the taillights I settled on, but
Okay.
they were from a Pontiac, 68 Pontiac passenger car. They were
Okay.
beautiful, artfully designed things, but no one is interested in that car enough to remanufacture them.
Right.
So it would be like searching junkyards,
Right,
finding
right.
rusted ones, sanding them, rechroming
Right.
them, and versus one click on your
Add to
laptop.
cart.
Exactly. And I've got taillights for my car. So
Right.
back then when I had aspirations of manufacturing this, I had to think practically. So that was a compromise, actually.
yeah.
The taillights were a compromise, and it was because I couldn't get large numbers of them brand new, like I could Corvette stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, this is fantastic. I love these Lego pieces of how it came together. Yeah.
So here's Carl Coleman, the gentleman on the left of this picture.
Right there.
And he is an expert at taking people's projects that are solid chunks of foam or clay and making molds. And I considered myself an expert at that for small like sculptures of people's faces and stuff.
Sure.
But I wasn't an expert at something in this scale and in this material.
Right.
So clay is really easy to pull a mold off of because it's soft. It'll never stick permanently to the mold material you're applying to it. But this stuff, the piece is fiberglass, Bondo, and the mold you're applying to its surface is fiberglass. So there's a risk of the two chemically bonding together. And if that happens, you're done. You've lost your whole thing. So I just spent 7 years making this big shape, and I didn't want to risk losing it in the mold making process.
Yeah.
So here's a guy who's has a reputation for making surfboards and hot tubs and car bodies and anything fiberglass. If you take your shape to him, he can make molds and really nice quality parts. So I partnered with him to do the next step, which was making molds from my shape. This is on a trailer. He lives in Arizona, so I had to take this shape on a trailer down to Arizona
with your Toyota pickup truck.
With my V6 Toyota pickup truck, which never was the same after this. You can kind of see the snow in the background. Because of my work schedule, I had to leave at like midnight and come back like in 24 hours. I just need to get it down there, give it to him, and come back. And it was in the worst snowstorm ever. I actually went off the road with the truck and the trailer.
No.
Seriously. And the front of the truck has all totally. And it was a nightmare trip that took like way, way longer than it should have.
Ted.
But it was so worth it. And at that point, you're just sick with passion.
Sure.
I'm dreaming about going to this, getting the car done, and getting to this guy's shop. And I would have like put the trailer hitch on my belt buckle and walked there if I had to. It was just, exactly.
Like Rocky IV training montage.
Yeah, exactly. I was just a sick person, I was ill.
Yeah, determined.
Okay, that's a nicer way to say it, I guess. So this is at Carl's shop, and Carl sort of looked at my stuff and prettied it up a little bit. There were some places where he had a more sophisticated tool for getting right to left symmetry than I had.
Oh, okay.
And he got it a little more symmetric and smoothed out the surface better, because obviously any imperfection in that surface is going to be built into every mold, which is going to be built into every part.
Yeah.
So it was critical that this piece be flawless.
Yeah, your problem would reproduce.
Yes, exactly. Forever. And one of the things I'd learned along the process of this was that there were a lot of people doing this. It sounds really unique, but actually, like anything else, if you look deep enough, there's a community of people doing this. They have their own magazine, they have their own meetings, and I was sort of a voyeur to that culture. And most of the things that people were making were, you'd look at them and say, something ain't right about that. That's somebody's homemade something. That's not a production car. And a lot of that came from right-left asymmetry. And I think our eye is tuned to pick that up subconsciously. You don't look at it and say, right-left asymmetry. You look at it and say, that ain't right. And it's not right because the right and left, we're used to cars being right-left symmetric.
Absolutely.
Like, to a T.
Yeah.
And also little imperfections and little waves in the body contour. Those things are little sort of subconscious clues to us that that's not a real car.
Right.
And I really, if I was going to do this, I needed this to look like a production car that had none of those flaws. So I was really a sticker on right-left symmetry and having the body be perfect and smooth. And that's why the first car was black. Sure. Black just doesn't let you get away with anything. If you have an imperfection in the surface, you'll see it in black right away.
Okay.
So the first car had to be black, and it had to come out perfect. And I knew if I could get a black car that looked straight and perfect, any other color would work fine.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So black was the starter.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, the symmetry thing always, like, I'm fascinated with symmetry in automotive design. Like, the Nissan Cube is not a huge seller.
Right.
Like, it was trendy for a while. It had that weird D-pillar or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Right. BMW had a concept car with a weird asymmetrical design. The Hyundai Veloster, which I'm obsessed with. I love those little Velosters. They're 3-door cars, like 2 on the passenger side. Yeah, but, like, the eye, like, our instinct is just to pick that out, where like something with the Nissan Cube where it's so big and bold, it's like, okay, that's just quirky.
Yeah.
Right. But anything that approaches like trying to be symmetrical but isn't.
Right. No, you got to either commit to yes or no.
Yeah.
And I really love those asymmetric cars because I'm so brave of their designers to go there.
Right.
And there was actually a time when I was doing this body where I had one fog light on and the other one was no fog light, and it was kind of cool looking in a way, and I thought for a second about it, and I think that was so overtly asymmetric that you wouldn't like look at it and say that's wrong. It's just like, oh, that guy made it asymmetrically.
Right.
So you're right. It's the subtle asymmetry that makes it sour.
Yeah. We're like, but we talked about the D-type earlier.
Yeah,
it has the single
hoop in the
single
hump
hoop
in the back. Yeah. Yep. And they used to sometimes not even have a passenger seat. It would be fiberglassed over there. So that's asymmetric. And those work, I think, just like what you guys were saying. It's boldly asymmetric, so you accept right away it's going to be asymmetric. But if it's supposed to be symmetric and it's not, that's a problem.
Yeah. And the bar that you set that you were mentioning earlier was that it looked like a production car.
Yeah. Had to look
right?
like a production car.
It would not look homemade.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
That's a very high bar. So you had these artistic and emotional benchmarks, and yet this standard of it passing as a production car.
Yeah, that was the goal. That was what we were
Which
trying to
I think you succeeded
Thanks,
at.
thank
yeah,
you.
it looks fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah. So here's the fiberglass
so this is
molds.
these are molds on the piece I was
so
showing
brilliant.
earlier. Yeah, it was. I love this phase.
Yeah.
So these are basically plastering. You put on some material that's like liquid dish soap so that nothing sticks to the bodywork, and then you build these surface molds. And there's a mold on the front of the car that pulls toward us off the front, and it's currently bolted with that flange to a mold behind it that does the fenders all the way back to the firewall.
Yeah.
And so these are just two pieces bolted together, and actually the body isn't under this. You would build this by applying that material to the shape that I made, but right now the shape's gone, and these are just two mold pieces bolted together.
Yeah. The idea of having to have something coat your car just enough that it doesn't bring an imperfection into the fiberglass.
Yeah.
Right? Oh man, that had to be so nerve-wracking.
It was horrifying for me. Like, way too scary that I couldn't do it myself. And,
right.
And even this guy, Carl Coleman, whom I showed Shirley earlier as being an expert, I said, "Can you guarantee me that we're not going to lock up a mold on this piece?" And he said, "No, I can't guarantee it, but it hasn't happened to me in 10 years."
Okay.
So I was still scared, but if I figured I can't stop here,
right?
And if we're going to make molds, the safest way to make molds is have this guy do them, because he has a 1 in 10 year flaw rate, and I have a 1 in 3 part flaw rate. Right. So Carl's doing it.
Yeah. No, amazing. Yeah. Oh, I would just be panicking so much.
When you said you would go down there once a month.
Yeah, once a month I'd go down there.
So did you fill it in and then leave, or were you there for the unveiling as well, or did you have to sit on your hands for a month going I don't know what's gonna work,
we started with we may have even started with this is the mold for the hood.
Okay.
And
because if you were going to have to redo a piece,
the hood is it's not the whole thing. It's a ton of work to make the hood.
Sure.
But it isn't as much work as the whole thing.
Right.
So one of the things that lessened the anxiety was it wasn't like an all or nothing whole car gets ruined. It's like a right-sided door might lock up, and then we'd have to redo the right-sided door.
Right.
And he was so good at this that I felt like if we needed to do a right-sided door, he and I could knock that out in probably 3 or 4 weeks versus it took me a year to do a door,
Sure.
So I felt a little more comfortable. And as pieces started to come out perfectly, and he's such a great craftsman, these parts, we'll see one in a second.
Yeah.
This is the hood mold it actually has a part in it, and the hood mold's a 2-piece mold, sandwich mold. So there's a mold bolted to the top and the back side, and that's just kind of what the mold looks like for the hood and there's fiberglass in there curing right now in these pictures.
That's amazing. Yeah. So here's you said this was
so
the
that's
first
the first thing we ever made, which was the outer door skin for the driver's side door.
Yeah.
And this was an unveiling, So when I left the month before, this hadn't been made, and when I arrived for my next trip out there, it was we got a part. Let's look at it. And he seriously pulled a rag off of this thing, and there it is, and it just was gleaming. It was so smooth and so perfect, and it was also one of the parts on the car that's unique to this car, because right about where the door handle is on our left side, the bodywork kicks into the rear wheel well, and so there's this big flare back there, so it was unique looking, and I could identify it as mine.
Yeah.
And it was flawless. It was gorgeous. It was God, I don't even need to paint this. I'm just going to do it in gray. This is so pretty.
The lines speak for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this was a huge moment for me to have that part come out and have it come out so pretty.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Yeah.
That's super cool.
There's more pieces coming out.
Yep. I can't imagine the anxiety of.
Yeah.
Oh, it was super. I mean, I just had so much invested in it, money and time.
Yeah.
And to think about there being a chance, even if it's 1 in 10 years, which is many, many, many projects for him, it's not 0.
Yeah. Right.
That's enough to keep me up at night.
Yeah.
So here's the process of making 2 cars and different parts coming out of molds and being applied to frames. And at that time, we didn't really have we used some sort of jigs for frames.
Sure.
One of them had a frame that we later changed, but we were basically just trying to make the body on something rigid that we could apply the pieces together and see if everything fit well. And Carl was really good. These pictures, it's hard to show, but one of the things he added to the project that I didn't is things like return lips and drip railing molding and just little details.
Okay.
Like if you think about the cutout for the wheel well, a lot of the people who made their own cars, they just cut it out. So there was a single ply edge there.
Right, instead of a tuck under.
In a real car, there's actually a little 90-degree, quarter-inch or half-inch lip under there.
Right.
And even that, at the end of it, has an upward one that's an 1/8 of an inch. And so it's a really complex little feature that is easy to overlook, but it's one of the subtle things that if you don't have it, it doesn't look factory.
Yep.
And he was adding stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's so important. And I didn't think about it. It didn't occur to me.
Sure.
But it really, that was like taking the whole thing up to another level.
Yeah.
To have those little details that subconsciously you register when you look at a car,
right?
But it isn't something you would consciously plan as you're designing it. You know?
Sure, that's amazing. Yeah.
And without him, that never would have happened. But he'd made enough cars, and he knew that like water needed to run off of this place to here. And so it was so nice to have his expertise on that.
That's amazing. Yeah. A while ago, I was trying to figure out why part of my older Saab was leaking. And so I was following where water was going. And I had never paid attention to exactly where water flowed on a car. And it's like, it almost flows through the inside more than it does the outside.
It's just you got to imagine at a big company, there's some one person who's like in charge of water movement on the car. There's so much into it that it makes you wonder if like some engineer actually, that was his task or her task to design that.
As if you didn't have enough with medical school, being a doctor, an artist, and now you're thinking about fluid dynamics.
Thank God Carl was thinking about it, because I wasn't until he introduced the idea, and it was so important.
I just imagine like the one-man band, like with the harmonica and like the cymbals between your knees.
Stomping,
exactly.
Absolutely. It was all about that. But with some good talented help too. Carl was invaluable.
So from where you are here to the finished product that was on the road with the black car, how many more changes did you go through on like frame and mechanicals, like the suspension design and the
lots and lots and lots. For the biggest challenge was having the hardtop fit in the back, and that required a lot of recalculating and changing. We talked a little bit about wheel clearance in the front, and putting a flare on the front fender. And there were probably 20 different versions of that problem solving that had to happen to make it not just a static piece of art, but something that could actually drive and turn and go over bumps and have the hardtop deployable and fit in the back without the back being huge. And it was a real challenge, that stuff.
But your perspective on issues at this time, I would imagine, would be quite a bit different than your perspective on issues earlier on, because you're so much closer to seeing the end result.
Definitely.
This time.
Right. And every month I would be like, we're a month away from finishing this thing.
Right.
And we never were, but it was just like almost where I could reach out and grab it. So this that picture just showed the Corvette that this isn't my Corvette, but it's the same year, 58.
Okay.
And I took the
with
picture.
The hardtop.
Yeah, so it has the hardtop on, and the cars look really cool with the hardtop on.
Yeah.
And they were so nice to have. If the weather was bad, you could roll up the door glass, and you essentially had a coupe. And they were harder to break into than a canvas car, and better weather resistance. So I really wanted a hardtop for my car, but the Corvette hardtops couldn't come with you if you took your car out. So you had to decide, like, look at the sky and say, it's not going to rain today, and I'm not bringing my hardtop, or it's going to rain today, I'm going to be in a hardtop, which isn't as fun as being in a convertible. So I really wanted my hardtop to come with me everywhere. And if I needed to, just crack the back open like this and take the hardtop out and put it on, which we did together this morning. Actually, we took it off, but you saw sort of the process of changing it from a coupe to a convertible.
And we want to be sensitive to your time here, so we can.
We're good. I got a meeting at noon.
Or
actually 12:15. So I should probably leave at noon.
No problem.
So that's just the car with the hardtop prototype. That's a solid piece of wood hardtop.
Okay.
That was the thing we used to make molds for the hardtop.
And is this cut out for working on the mechanics of
my
rolling
God,
glass
so
up and down?
a lot of these project cars and kit cars don't have roll-up glass or
Yeah.
even door handles. And I was like, nope, we're going to get roll-up glass, and
Sure.
it's going to be a real car that way. So
Yeah.
you can roll up the doors glass when the hardtop's on. It's going to be a coupe, and that was a challenge. The door's very short because I wanted to sit on the rear axle the way a lot of like the E-Type Jag, long bonnet out front, sit on the rear axle in the rear, and so I didn't have a lot of room for door glass, and that was a challenge. And we actually had to cut cut that precious door off, and we ended up making another skin to replace it. But to just get the layout of how the door channel window glass elevated machinery was going to work, it was a challenge, and get it all crowded in there,
and figuring out like how much this needed to come down on the top.
And it had to fit, the top had to fit in the back too. It was that was the most difficult thing to do. And Carl it was great, but this was new territory for him too. So we really we did a lot of work, reworking and reworking on this.
Man,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and here's
so
the
that's
finished
black
product.
car with the top on.
Yeah.
So that's what my hardtop looks like, and it's French. The whole rear window is Frenched in so that it'll fit in the back, and it ended up being that. I kind of like the look of that. The glass being inset a little from the rear. It just is different.
Adds a little pop. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I like that. And some directional aspects to the design. Yeah.
And
I know you said you didn't like these wheels as much. I really love
those wheels. Are fantastic.
I think they look great.
Yeah, so those are the old Chevy Rally wheels taken apart and the mounting piece brought out. I think I think it's Rudge wheels that are the German version they put on the old Gull Wings. I might be wrong about that name.
Okay.
The real enthusiasts are probably cringing that I'm getting that wrong. But
4 people listen to this.
well, that was my attempt at making a Rudge wheel. I also didn't like the inauthenticity of a fake knockoff.
Sure.
So I felt guilty about the fact that isn't a real knockoff. But I like the look of that wheel too. And I rode those wheels for a long time on the black car and even on the red car for a long time.
I think not only does it add style and meet the retro elements of that, like the period correct feel, just kind of the emotions that are evoked from it, but I think it adds just an element of practicality because like your ground clearance isn't crazy low. Like we were joking when you came in, you just flew into my driveway like it was nothing. Where Ian can't drive over a picture of a pothole. No,
they're practical, strong wheels. They're heavy, but that the whole car weighs 2,400 pounds, so a little extra weight in the wheels doesn't bother. It's unsuspended weight, so it's But I changed to wires. I like the wire wheel look. A little more European-y looking.
For sure.
But I no thanks. I appreciate the compliment. I like those wheels too.
No, that's great. How did you land on the name Varsity?
So Parks is my last name, which is very static. I mean, Parks would be a good name for like a riding mower maybe, but not a sports car, Sure. So at the time when I was in high school, kind of drawing cars and thinking about cars a lot, sports were important to me, and Varsity was like the top level. So
sure.
So it seemed like that was a name that would make sense.
And it does for the benchmarks that you were setting for yourself. I really like that, like these standards that you were placing upon yourself for meeting, and
and it's funny, the 50s and 60s cultures were like leather jackets. And so that it kind of had that little, there was a little nuance of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I landed on. It wasn't, a funny thing is looking at potential names and some cool names that I liked, but they were already taken. You have to search and make sure you're coming up with something that isn't already being made, and it's always mind-boggling how many things are being made or used already. So you start with a limited number of things to choose from, and this fit the bill and also wasn't used at the time.
We'll just buy domain names as a joke. So that's something we just
do
for fun.
Exactly.
I own my baby is better than your baby.com
on a whim,
just as a joke.
So you're competing against people that already have names registered just because, right?
That aren't even using them,
right? That haven't even gone this far,
right?
They probably can't even draw,
The harsh realities.
Oh man.
So that's the engine on the black car, which is, at the time that I was doing this, which is about 1990 at this stage, like I had to make decisions about what my engine compartment was going to be like in terms of its dimensions and where the motor mounts were going to be on the frame, and always trying to squeeze the weight as rearward as possible, and what my bell housing was going to be like, how big it was going to be, and what the transmission was going to be. So I had to make some decisions pretty early. And so at 1990, I was choosing my motor, and this was sort of a top of the heap motor back then. It isn't anything like a Ferrari motor, but it's serviceable. I'd sort of cut my teeth on a Chevy 350 with my Corvette, so I was comfortable with Chevy 350. This is a Chevy 350 with just a real pretty sort of 1990s high-tech at the time intake manifold. So this is the Corvette TPI motor used in Camaros and Corvettes 80s and 90s.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and there's the small block. Yeah.
And then the new iteration of that is the LS3.
Yeah. So the LS3, which is so superior, it's 14 years, 24 years later. Is that right?
Yeah.
24 years of technology later.
Yeah, we're
GM
all
makes
very
the
old.
LS3. And I was telling you guys, it's 100 pounds lighter because it's all aluminum. It's 130 more horsepower. And it's about 8 miles per gallon better mileage. So in every way, it's superior to that engine. And I'm sure 20 years from now, there'll be a new engine that's even better. But
are you using the same transmission, or is it?
Yeah, I use a Tremec T56 6-speed manual, which is a really strong transmission. And
like
and
the
very
standard
sturdy.
for mating to an LS.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the black car also a 6-speed, or is that a 5-speed?
Yeah, both are Tremec T56.
Wow.
The red car has a T56 Magnum, which I just think means you pay a little more for it. Both of those can handle way more horsepower than I'm generating.
Sure.
But again, one of the underlying themes was reliability, bulletproof. It just got to be. I don't want ever tear into that transmission. So give me something. I'll pay a couple $100 extra to make sure I never have to think about it.
Right.
And that I was convinced from their marketing that was going to be. Yeah. And it's been great. Both those trannies have been awesome.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry to keep asking dorky questions.
No, it's okay.
The rear end, what's that?
So that's a Curry is the company.
Okay.
And it's a knockoff on a Ford 9-inch. Solid axle, live axle rear end, 9-inch differential. So strong, bulletproof, overbuilt for this. It's got a 411 gear in it, so it's real aggressive for high-speed takeoff. And then the T56 being a 6-speed, your 6th gear is better than a 1-to-1 ratio. So I can go 70 miles per hour at about 1,700 RPMs, and that makes the highway mileage really, really good.
So you get 5 close ratio, and then a 6th is
6
overdrive.
is like an overdrive.
Gotcha.
Nice.
So it's perfect. I can horse around it off the start at a stoplight, and still like go down to Colorado Springs and just sip gas all the way down there.
This is like an automotive greatest hits album.
It's exactly that, because every piece on this, I got to look and say, what's my favorite fill in the blank.
Yeah, you made a sweet mixtape.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's my greatest hits, the things I want and lust for the most.
Yeah,
and I guess that's the reward for building your own car, is every little element you get to choose and make it your favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, dash work up.
This is the first iteration of design on the dash. So I would go to Arizona on these trips and just take cardboard and balsa wood and paper mache or whatever it took and sculpt things. And I'd torn out 3 or 4 of these before I came up with this one. And it gave me a pod for instruments in front of me. Yeah. It gave me a center console for instruments. And I love instruments. You'll see in a minute. This has like 20 different instruments in it. This was a 1-instrument console design, which I trashed immediately. But I needed room for a radio, mic controls. I wanted a glove box. So I had a glove box door over there. And then this was the next picture, I think, is
wow, look at that.
Final design.
That's beautiful.
And the next picture actually is the final design in the black car.
Look at that.
So I really love knowing everything about what's happening in my engine. So I've got vacuum gauges and all kinds of stuff that you probably don't need.
Well, that's more of that aviation influence kind of sneaking in.
And it's medical too. When a patient's on the operating room table, we monitor everything. Yeah. And you just get all kinds of early warnings if anything's coming astray. And I want that about how my car's running. So
early warnings. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It all adds up to the reliability.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's the model, the 1/18th
Yep.
model up at the top,
Yep.
right? Is this
Solid
the foam?
solid
Yep.
foam with Bondo. After Carl has made it smooth and nice, and you'll
Okay.
see in the
sorry. Let me
that's
kick
okay
back.
in
Yeah.
the cove on the side.
Right, here's some little
spears.
flares. Yep.
That was something I was into for a while. I ended
Okay.
up not doing that because it was just getting a little too. I tend to over design things, and that was definitely a little too much. So it looked better without those, I thought.
This is the getting dressed and removing one thing
Yeah, exactly.
kind of element.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe three things for me because I really like to overdo it. And then the bottom one is actually a real body on a frame.
Okay.
No engine or transmission, but just
Sure.
starting to see how things were. And I loved the way it was coming together. It
Yeah.
has those Rudge wheels on it.
Yeah.
Or my attempt at making Rudge wheels.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And this is a great guy, Mike Gerace, who's no longer doing this kind of work, but at the time he had a body repair shop and was an enthusiast for hot rods and homemade cars, and just a super skilled. He comes from a farming family, and farmers can build anything.
They
and they're
can.
super
Most resourceful.
Yeah, it's super resourceful and innovative, and they know how to weld. And this guy was just a genius in so many things, and he helped me so much in the exhaust routing and brake lines, fuel lines, paint. He painted that car, and the paint on the black car is just flawless. I mean,
wow.
A lot of it is credit to Carl for making a body that's straight and good, but Mike spent a ton of time making that paint just gorgeous. So I got a
Here in
shout
Colorado?
out for him. Yeah.
Amazing.
His shop was in Thornton. He's not doing this kind of work anymore, but God, he's a great guy to work with.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I love this picture because
Yeah,
it's just
this is the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like that spans like 25 years of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
From the little model, the solid foam, the first one on a frame, and then the real deal at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's just fantastic.
4 pictures and so much into it.
Yeah, right. That's And then this is back at Carl's shop with the 2 cars. We were up on the roof doing something and looking through a little hole, and it's like, oh man, look at that. This was such a dream come true to me to see these cars, and I could see here how the humps and the hood scoop kind of complemented each other.
Yeah.
And I just loved the way it looked, which I sure better at that point because I'd spent so much time trying to make it what I wanted.
Sure.
And I just thought, I like that car. I really want that car.
Yeah. Amazing.
And this is at Mike's shop up in Thornton when he had this shop, and we're just putting finishing touches on the black car and getting ready to do more body work and paint the red car.
Amazing. Yeah, there's the red car.
So in the development of the red car, Mike changed his course in life, and this is actually a different shop, a guy up in Brighton named Hans Gebhardt, who's also a genius, and he's doing the paint and helping me on this car. And this was the first time we had any paint on the car, and I came up and I was just like, oh my God, I just love that.
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
I love the way the red one looks. I think it's great.
Thanks. I do too.
And these were
love them
some
both.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are other people doing what I'm doing. So these are other people who have ideas for what a cool car is and unique, and did the same thing. They went out and just built their own designs, and they're really creative, and some beautiful, some not. But I think they're all beautiful to their owners. Everybody loves the way their kid looks.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And
the most beautiful boy in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So these are their children.
Right.
And they're it's just cool that people are doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some are old in the 50s. Some are done now.
Yeah.
And there's just some great examples. All of them had intentions of making, at least all the ones I could read about, the designers really thought they had something that was going to be just take off on the market. And of course, none of them, including mine, ever did. But it's just, I love the rear tire on this thing.
Yeah,
it's like ready to go 4-wheeling or something.
Yeah.
And probably it's just the only tire he had to stick on there at that time.
Right.
To wheel it from shop to to go out that sunny day and take a picture of it.
Just some roller tires.
Yeah.
Took it off his wheelies.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what you've done is monumental. It's fantastic. Like the results speak for themselves. The fit and finish of the car looks amazing. Such an amazing balance of practicality and just aesthetics, just emotional, evoking aesthetics. It's fantastic.
Thanks. That was the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. The things I like about this whole story are the idea that you can leave a note on someone's windshield.
Yeah.
And then find out that it's just someone who did the damn thing. Like you did it.
Yeah.
And also just like tracing back, not only like to, because I like doing that in music. I kind of used that analogy earlier, like figuring out what, like a band that I like where did that come from? Where did that little piece come from? Where did that piece of instrumentation come from? And so you can do that back to other cars with yours, but you can also kind of trace back to other elements in your life, which is really cool. Which is really an interesting way to look at cars. And
it's fun to deconstruct it and think about it like this, and sort of go back archaeologically and put all that together. It's really a kick for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think it's another way that, one of our big things with the show is trying to explain car culture to people who think about, art or music or movies or whatever in these sorts of terms, and say like, well, car culture is kind of the same,
right?
And kind of being ambassadors for car culture that way. So a project like this is perfect for that.
It is great. It absolutely is.
I think we all share the same illness,
Yeah, exactly.
One form or the other.
Well, I think this is a perfect place to stop.
Yeah,
we took up a bunch of your time.
No, it was fun, guys. I wish I had more time to do it with you guys. That was really fun.
All right, well, come back anytime, and thank you so much for again persevering through.
I could do this all day long. It thrills me no end to talk about cars, especially this car. I mean, I just love talking about this car.
It's awesome. Fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll see you around.
Yeah, just let me know when it airs. I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
And watch it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Ted.
Bye. Well, that was fantastic.
That was amazing. We cannot thank Ted Parks enough for spending time in the Blanket Fort with us.
Yeah, please go read a little bit more about his story on his website, which is right up there on the screen. If you're listening to this, it's varsityroadsters.com, or if you just Google it, it'll get you there. Like I kind of said it at the end of the show, I just love, we kind of spend a lot of time on this show kind of worrying and fretting about the state of car culture and stuff. Yes. But again, you get out there, you leave a note on someone's windshield, and you meet a super interesting and earnest
really nice
and well-spoken person.
Yeah, exactly. That shares a lot of the same interests, that can that you have common ground with, that you can speak and have an amazing dialogue with.
Right. Yeah. And just it really does go to show like how intersecting all of these other pieces of culture are between art. And, he's also, we didn't talk about it on the show, but he's a musician. He's in a band. Yeah. And all of these things kind of come together. And that's where, to me, car culture is the most interesting.
Absolutely.
So, go to his website, do all of that. And then if you're in Colorado, bust your knee skiing and then have him put you back together.
Exactly.
So it's a one-stop shop sort of operation here.
He can sell you a new knee and a hot rod.
Exactly.
Yeah. So rate and review us on iTunes. Subscribe on YouTube. This episode is best watched on YouTube for sure. So
absolutely.
So check it out on YouTube. We show so many great pictures of the development of the car and the car itself.
We're at TeamClearCoat.com.
Yep.
And all the media's social. And then, also get out there, leave some notes on windshields, and do the damn thing. Make stuff and do that.
Yes. Also call our Team ClearCoat Automotive Crisis Line if you see something like this and you don't know what the heck it is, because that's a huge piece of this car. 720-515-1391 and report it. Let us know. Yeah.
Okay. We love you.
We love you, everybody.
Goodbye.